hospitals and producers of medical products have for over 1 year been sounding the alarm. There are certain devices which have been taken off the market, for example, different balloon-type catheters, for example, for the hearts of children. They are no longer produced. What has happened? Well, we have in 2015 the new revision, the medical devices regulation, and the purpose was for devices to be accessible to all and to facilitate the production and the dissemination. However, that was a response to a crisis at that particular time with implants in France and Germany. Right now, we have another situation. There's a need for new certification, and they can't do that because of the bureaucratic red tape, because of the financial issues involved in this certification. And this is particularly the case in products which are not frequently used, but are nonetheless absolutely necessary and imperative. So something has to be done. The Commission has generated this particular revision, and we have called upon the Commission that it is absolutely necessary to move as quickly as possible with this revision. Nothing has taken place up until now. That's scandalous. There are questions now for the Commission. First of all, what is the Commission considering in order to relieve small and middle-sized enterprises and to satisfy the new requirements to help SMEs and to help hospitals as well? Second, part of this certification process, well, first of all, the certificate which has been issued ought to be valid until a new certificate is issued, and that means an extension of the certification, and also that for certain niche products, the certification process and the recertification process, well, this ought to be done away with altogether, particularly for these niche products. So I would like the Commission, please, to respond to those issues and those questions.
We all agree that patient access to safe medical devices in Europe is essential. And I believe that we also all agree that both access and safety are fundamental priorities in everything we do in this area. When the European Parliament and the Council adopted the medical device regulation in April 2017, the objective of this was to strengthen quality control and market surveillance. And as MEP Niebler mentioned, we must not forget the breast implant scandal of 2011 that triggered the revision of this legislation. The reasons we had to act as EU back then for patient safety remain every bit as valid now. In May 2024, the transitional period of the medical device regulation will be coming to an end. We have made a lot of progress to implement new rules. 34 notified bodies have been designated under the regulation. Their capacity has significantly increased compared with the situation under previous EU directives. We have set up expert panels and their secretariat in the European Medicines Agency. They are essential for the more thorough assessment of clinical data. Yet, as we move towards the end of the transition period, it has become extremely clear that ensuring patient access to these devices are not guaranteed. And we are, in fact, facing a serious risk of shortages of medical devices. Honourable members, being aware of this risk, we have tasked our experts to take actions and to develop options forward. Aside from continuously monitoring the situation, we are together working with the Medical Device Coordination Group on finding solutions to this problem. A list of mitigation actions was adopted in August in order to increase notified body capacity and to boost preparedness among manufacturers. And several actions are already underway in order to be able to solve the problems that we have seen. But beyond these efforts, there are calls for additional actions from members of this House and from several member states, and of course from stakeholders. And they include calls for an amendment to the regulation to extend the transition period. We are looking into legislative measures, such as amending the regulation, to avert the risk of shortages of critical medical devices, and we are already consulting all relevant stakeholders as part of this assessment. The issues raised in the oral question include the specific situation of so-called orphan devices for small patient groups, which are part of that ongoing assessment. In the meantime, I am pleased to announce and share with the Parliament today that the Medical Device Coordination Group has already set up a task force on orphan devices, has held a workshop with clinicians and industry and other stakeholders. So what are the concrete next steps for this file? In December, at the occasion of the Health Council, I will be providing the clear proposed solutions to all EU health ministers. My objective is to address both the very short-term issues, but also the structural issues that have appeared. My also objective is the intention to keep this Parliament fully involved in this process. Your support in averting shortages of medical devices is crucial, and I look forward to hearing your views today. Thank you.
Colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, healthcare in Europe is under threat. There's the care of children, serious problems there. I used to work in a pediatric clinic, and in pediatric surgery and pediatric cardiology have said that we're working under conditions of the 1950s because we don't have modern devices and instruments. Brexit, Corona, numerous different crises, and also because of the lack of understanding of the needs of the protection of patients in these institutions as well. Unfortunately, there's terrible bureaucracy, and nothing has been done. Actually, many issues have not been improved in any way, shape, or form. And now we need a solution. What colleague Niebler said, indeed, I underline the various points that she took up. And Madam Kyriakidis, indeed, I do feel we have to be ambitious. We have to be ambitious and take major steps forward. We have to take into consideration the long-term solutions, the solutions out there for pediatric medicine and other forms of medicine as well. We need a regulation which will allow for the proper production and dissemination of devices, medical devices, particularly those in pediatrics, in order to protect those ever so sensitive and very vulnerable little patients that we have out there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, President. When a clinician sets up a respirator that gives 2 breaths per minute, what they are trying to do is that this provides a certain amount of air per minute, and this means we need to be precise, and this is what the medical devices regulation was trying to do that came into effect in 2017. We want to make sure everything was precise and worked correctly, and we know certain cases where they have failed. There was, for example, the breast implants that were faulty. There have been other devices as well. This has happened. However, this regulation was a good framework to improve the viability of medical products. We want more transparency as well, and this has been recognized by clinicians. What we want is reliability. Throughout the pandemic, we worked on strengthening the European Medicines Agency, in that we included provisions that would lead to greater availability of medical devices, above all in times of crisis. we have to say that we have a range of different legislative tools available to us. Clearly, we need to look at whether this regulation has worked. Are there certain cases where there is risk of scarcity with certain rare diseases, for example, or with certain pediatric treatments? It may be necessary to come up with certain derogations as has been done in the past. We need to look at this on a case-by-case basis. We don't want to water down this regulation. We don't want to reduce the trust in this regulation. We want to make sure we're using reliable equipment. Peter Lisa mentioned this. Now, there could be other factors at play here. The supply chains have been broken. Part of the production wasn't based in Europe. Maybe we need to look at these factors as well. We need to try and find solutions, or maybe these aren't solutions that can be found in the area of legislation, but there's work that can be done with member states to address these. But this regulation is not leading to lower levels of healthcare in Europe. I don't think that's can be blamed on the regulation, but we can improve things. We can identify where there's problems, but above all, we want to focus on reliability and trust in medical devices. Thank you very much.
Thank you, President. Commissioner, colleagues, we should never forget that the draft revision of this legislation on medical devices was published following the tragedy of the PIP breast implants in 2012. 12 years later, we're discussing the implementation of this legislation. That does not reflect our view of an ambitious Europe for health, the pragmatism and independence that is needed. Patient safety cannot be a variable. Healthcare standards are just as important, if not more, than other European laws. We have to accept that the implementation of this regulation is currently in danger. Yes, there are too few notified organizations, but also we have been unable to forecast certain production, and it is too slow. For months now, all kinds of manufacturers have been sounding the alarm bells, and it's time to find pragmatic solutions that will be acceptable for all. So yes, we need to change the regulations once again, but at the same time, in order to avoid possible dangerous stocks of supply, we need to act quickly, but we can't undermine this ambitious and necessary regulation, which is so important for European patients.
We have already extended the deadlines for the new rules of the medical devices regulation to apply until May 2024, it was said. The European Parliament was clear that we do not yet wish another postponement that would be in the disinterest of patients. Now, if the regulation poses issues that will affect access to care for patients, perhaps it really requires other changes to the regulation. And that would be my question to the Commission. So what does the Commission recommend? And I would like to stress that the Parliament should be involved early on regarding the discussion. And I was happy to hear from the Commissioner that she said so, that it is important that the European Parliament is involved in order to discuss possible changes to this regulation instead of having again to face another urgent procedure to extend the deadline to apply the regulation's rules, which are important. Thank you.
Thank you, President. Colleagues, Commissioner. While Macron and OPEC are asking what side we're on, China or India, and we're trying to strengthen global governance for healthcare. Europe is thinking about Brussels bureaucracy. France is recording deaths in its emergency departments because no one can look after them. We're seeing people have to wait for places. If they have cancer, for example, they have to wait before there is a hospital bed. Private hospitals don't have this problem. In France, we have 2 times fewer scanners than Greece or Denmark. French hospitals have said that they don't have enough scanners, and we see the same problems that we had in the 2017 regulation, which set out a new framework for medical devices, or in vitro diagnosis, or pregnancy tests, for example. We have to preserve what we can in Europe, but we also have to know that Mr. Macron has got rid of hospital beds and thousands of healthcare workers during the COVID crisis. At the same time, the healthcare situation has worsened in France and in Europe. In fact, one woman died after 28 hours waiting on a trolley. European businesses are drowning in bureaucracy, and they can't get their products to market. So what we're seeing is now that private companies are certifying products. This is 450 billion euros in 2022. But let's look at specific examples. How can you explain the fact that certificates are granted to companies that have been involved in the PIP breast implant scandal? And nothing is remarked about this. Everything is certified, but nothing is properly checked. There have been deaths of children, hundreds of deaths of children in France, 11,000 deaths in Europe, according to Amazon figures. Another figure, Pfizer was condemned to 2 billion because of fines because of its declarations on Bextra, anti-inflammatory drugs. Johnson & Johnson, millions of dollars of fine because there were risks with Xarelto, its anticoagulant. It's all too easy to ignore these sad figures, and we need to look at all of these issues in order to provide correct responses to your question.
Thank you very much, President, Commissioner, colleagues. Now, when I was reading about the different facts around this regulation, I was yet again disappointed. There's something wrong in the way decisions are formulated and then adopted in this European Union. There's no explanation when, after this has been adopted, because of the huge financial efforts for second certification, even those that are of excellent quality, have been used for a long time, can suddenly disappear from the market because companies decide to withdraw them. And the result is visible. You have a shortage of such devices, which means worse healthcare. I think we've all become clinicians when we were talking about the Chinese virus, and we're talking how we don't have medical staff, we don't have ventilators. But I think everybody's forgotten that they suddenly had become clinicians and are making the same mistakes again. I think this is inexplicable, and I think we shouldn't allow for such a shortage of good healthcare. Commissioner, it's high time for the European Commission to start acting adequately. And it's in your interest, because we keep criticizing you, but it would be a good idea stop this vicious circle of producing legislation that hurts the citizens.
And Commissioner, colleagues, our hospitals and clinicians are under huge pressure. But once again, today there's a new difficulty they're facing now in relation to the supply of medical products, respirators, defibrillators, and other devices which are vital for all of our health are at risk. There's a scarcity, and this has an impact in relation to treatment. Businesses in the sector and our Parliament have already repeatedly highlighted this to the European Commission over recent years. Moreover, in addition to the current economic situation, these businesses face heavy restrictions they can't meet because there's not enough certificates available. These businesses require security. So we are turning to the European Commission and we ask the Commission, can you find some rapid solutions in the very short term?
Our target is to create a better regulatory framework for the citizens of Europe. And I am certain that the revision here of the medical devices regulation will protect producers, suppliers, patients, and provide a better situation for them overall. There are difficulties, and it's absolutely necessary to overcome the various problems that exist, and also to circumvent problems concerning costs for patients. We have to get rid of those particular problems as well. The targets are there, the target to protect patients, in other words, but we must also produce a regulation which will provide for equal access as well, or facilitate equal access of patients to medical products without additional costs. We have to look at the market very carefully, and any problems or any wrinkles in the situation, they have to be ironed out in order to protect our patients above all. So we want a transformation for sustainability and secure medical devices. But I've had, from my constituents, numerous different calls for improvement. Particularly, pediatrics has been seriously affected. Different mass products have been put out there by different multinational corporations, and that because there's no other solution to stock up the storerooms. So by May 2024, 24,000 certificates will lapse, but the system can only deal with 6,300 certificates per year. So we don't want to end up in any sort of bottlenecks and not have those absolutely necessary for life devices out there. So we need a quick solution for the healthcare system, and all of those different red tape aspects of the regulation have to be gotten rid of to protect our patients and our citizens. Thank you.
I absolutely want to see the full and effective application of the medical device regulation, because it's extremely important for patients and those providing their medical care to give assurance on the safety and the effectiveness of these devices. But I do not want to see a situation develop whereby there will be a shortage or, as some fear, unavailability of vital products. Doctors say that they are already struggling with shortages, and they are fearful that this situation will become much more serious. The slow implementation of the medical device regulation and the limited capacity of notified bodies has led to this situation. And without urgent action, this situation will only get worse, and these shortages will impact on patients and on the healthcare system. So, Commissioner, I welcome your statement today that in December you're going to bring forward clear proposals to address this situation, and I would hope that this will include proposals for a targeted legislative solution that will protect those devices that are already in the market. And what we need as well is a targeted or a tailored transition period for some devices. Thank you.
Ireland has urgent and significant concerns regarding the medical devices and in vitro diagnostics regulation. There are real issues with the implementation of the directive that need to be addressed. The regulations introduce new certification requirements. However, substantial and immediate certification bottlenecks mean that Ireland could face considerable shortages in key medical products in the near future. This places patients' lives at risk and our healthcare system under strain. If these bottlenecks are not addressed by May 2024 deadline for certification, there is a risk that 1 in 4 medtech products currently in use could be discontinued. At a time when Europe should be building up homegrown industry and investing in innovation, without some adjustments to the implementation of this regulation, we risk losing medtech firms to the US and other markets outside the EU, and thus losing out on investment and competitiveness in this area. The Irish Government is calling for a legislative proposal that will prevent the loss of the existing safe and essential medtech products.
Thank you, Mr. President. Commissioner, if we want to provide good help to our patients, we need specialists, devices, and the trust of patients. Today we're talking about devices which could be used to cure patients. I would like to call on the Commission and ask it not to reduce quality requirements, but to reduce red tape, which imposes a very
big burden on producers and which fails to ensure quality and quantity. I would like to call on us to try to promote production in the EU, and so we could help patients and medical specialists. But I'm talking about bureaucracy again. We should cut the red tape. We should be ready to implement fully the regulation in 2024, and we should be able to see a totally new situation. Thank you.
Frau Kommissarin.
President, Commissioner, now the European Medical Association has stated that they need immediately, in English now,
Devices. Das ist ein Warnsignal.
So it is a warning as far as what we have to take into consideration right now, that children will no longer be treated in pediatric clinics because the necessary devices and products won't be there, and because there are different certification bottlenecks, and it will be very difficult to justify that, of course, to the public. So it's not only a issue for patients, for the healthcare system, it's also an economic and financial problem. They're doing much quicker in the United States on this particular front. So, Madam Kyriakidis, we need political leadership. It's really not enough to say that something will be done. Actually, we have to take this issue by the horns right now and really deal with it immediately. In 2 years, 20,000 products will lose their certification, and this will be of serious, of course, consequences for the patients, for the economy as a whole. So please, personally, if you could take this issue on.
Honourable members, first of all, thank you for bringing this important file for discussion in the European Parliament. And I have said already that this is a priority for us and for the European Commission. And our intention is not, as has been heard, to hurt the citizens, but to protect them. So quality is paramount. And I can assure you that it is a political priority for the Commission and for myself, because we're fully aware of the challenges and we have wasted no time. Now, the data received from the notified bodies and industry show that the situation is indeed extremely challenging. Only around 2,000 certificates have been issued under the medical device regulation, while about 23,000 will be expiring in May 2024. This is why the Medical Device Coordination Group has been working on a list of actions, and all stakeholders are involved, including the medical associations, in order to look at what we can change. And we expect that the important actions that we will be taking will make a real difference. We are also, as a Commission, listening carefully to all calls for additional measures, including an amendment of the medical device regulation, and we are proceeding with the next steps. Now, I don't think there is anyone in this plenary who will say that the unavailability of medical devices needed for health systems and patients isn't extremely worrying. And this is a priority. But the medical device regulation allows member states to grant national-level derogations from the applicable conformity assessment procedures. And in some member states, they are being able to apply these to bridge the gap between the expiry of an old certificate and the issue of a certificate under the MDR. The Medical Device Coordination Group is now working on to find a uniform approach for these measures. However, we fully recognize that as more certificates expire, the worse the situation is expected to become. So we're very conscious of the urgency that I have heard spoken in this plenary in order to avoid shortages of medical devices which will put patient safety at risk. The regulations on medical devices are a very important step towards providing safe and better performing devices. And these are to benefit the patients and health. And as I said, we're working on a legislative proposal plus other actions. Our task is to ensure that safe devices, and this needs to remain a priority, remain available for patients and for our health systems. So let me assure you that I will be remaining in very close contact with this House over the next few weeks and keep you fully informed of our next steps. Thank you.